doing? He's a moron.
That's really cool. I guess we got to cut all that. Yeah. I thought it was a good intro, good opener. You'd think I'd be embarrassed about being a bench warmer, but I'm not. I own it proudly. Okay, so whatever. Let's roll into the next episode. Brian doesn't know what we're talking about, so I figured we would just start throwing topics at him.
Is this in? Are we talking this podcast or just in? Are we speaking in generalities?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah. I thought it would be fun to dive into the deep, seedy underbelly of performance-enhancing drugs, and let's just talk a lot about those today.
Okay.
But first of all, tell me your favorite PED you've ever used.
Okay. I mean, testosterone's the best.
I mean, it really is.
Testosterone's the king, and everything after that. I mean, if you're talking steroids, testosterone is numero uno, and everything else is just an analog of testosterone. You know.
Well, our bodybuilders, people that take it to the extreme, they're doing testosterone on top of all these other ones, or
yeah. Testosterone's the base.
Is that the base that you would start with?
Always.
Yeah. Okay. So you're not skipping that and taking like andro and all these other ones, like crazy.
No, I mean, testosterone's always involved. Now, I'm not please, if we're listening to this, there's way better people who are authority on performance enhancing, anabolic steroids than I am. So I'll speak kind of what I know, and what I know might not be true. Okay. This is, I'm an amateur. But yeah, testosterone is pretty much the base of it. I don't know that. So if you're talking like bodybuilders, you might cut out testosterone, as you lead up to a show, because you could hold a little more water. So you might want to switch, but I think you can switch to, there's different esters of testosterone. So, and, testosterone suspension is like instant. So it's like if a power lifter could take test suspension like the day he lifts, because it's going to instantly jack up your testosterone levels. I don't know if that's a bodybuilding thing. There are compounds that bodybuilders will use like the day of, like certain, a few days out to prep for it. But yeah, I mean, bodybuilding is probably the most experimental, most aggressive form of PED use.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of a hot topic now, but like 10 years ago. Yeah, about 10 years ago, I feel like maybe it was before that, the clinics started popping up. But what I really feel like the clinics, or what a lot of them can turn into, are, like pill mills, right?
Yeah.
I feel like that's what a lot of them are. They're not necessarily, you're not going to get the best education or perhaps even the best type of stuff out of those places.
I think the compounds you're getting are pharmaceutical grade. They're good.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you're just recommending somewhere to go, you can get steroids from a local guy at the gym, but if you can afford it, and prices have really come down. I mean, it used to be very expensive to have a test prescription. It's like $50 a month. So prices have come way down. But I think especially if you're talking, I was surprised that the amount of compounds you could get from prescription, with very little effort. You can get primobolan, Anavar, nandrolone, Deca, all can come. They're all basically, if it was intended for human use, a lot of these places will prescribe it. Now I have no affiliation, no like advertisement from them, but Transcendent is who I use for TRT. I just used their testosterone cypionate 200 milligrams a week, but you can get other stuff as well.
Yeah. What's some of that other stuff that you could get?
I know you can get primobolan. You can get Anavar, but it is, I do blood work every 6 months. And I think, they'll watch, please don't quote me on this, but I think they're looking for like testosterone as a base, you can do that, but like they want to make sure your HDL and stuff is high enough that because if you start stacking another compound, say primobolan, on top of your testosterone, it could lower your HDL, your healthy cholesterol. So there's some parameters. I only have an experience with one, other than my Ukrainian doctor formerly, but I only have experience with one actual pharmacy.
Yeah. What's your recommendation for guys Do you think everybody should be doing TRT?
No. I mean, honestly, I think I didn't take exogenous hormone until it was my 32nd birthday.
You didn't do pros or anything like that in your 20s or anything?
I had taken some pro hormones, but like the last one I took was arimistane.
Yep, I remember that one.
Am I saying that right? It really dried me up. I hated it. I didn't finish the bottle.
Or was it Epistane?
Epistane, thank you.
I took Epistane in college.
Not Epistane.
Not knowing that it dried you out, and that's how I ended up tearing a tricep and hamstring within 2 weeks.
Yeah, I don't remember any strength gains or anything. I just remember my knees. Like, I don't have any knee trouble. My knees really hurting. And I had taken, well, actually, even our test launch formula that used to be 19 nor dione. Yeah, because the diol was more expensive. It was better, but more expensive, which converted, it was a pro hormone that converted to nandrolone, DECA, and you get all the side effects too. Like you weren't horny, you weren't, you're kind of indifferent sexually, which is a side effect of nandrolone. That's why you usually want to take nandrolone with testosterone. Nandrolone lowers your test levels.
Right.
So with great strength gains, your joints felt really good. Nandrolone and the pro hormone, 19-anadione. Also, I'm not saying that. It also they help build collagen and connective tissue. So DECA is a really good one. Like, it makes your joints feel really good. You feel really strong when you take it.
I remember companies back in the day. It was like stores. I'll just leave the names out for whatever reason, but DECA was always getting advertised, like, hey, go into the store today, and it was on the radio and get DECA.
So that was going to be like the DECA as a pro hormone. It converted to DECA, so it converted to nandrolone. You could never go into a store and take an orally. Well, you couldn't go into a store and buy DECA. That would need to be intramuscular injection, and so it wasn't orally available. But as a pro hormone, you could take it, and as it passed the liver, it was converted to nandrolone in the body. So that's they named a lot of stuff like that. I've seen like protein and carb named Anavar. So it's a really tricky, there's been a lot of like VARs and different pro hormones, testosterone boosters, stuff named after real hormones.
Yeah, it's just in the sphere lately, and there's a lot of not pushback to TRT, but there's a lot of unknown about it to the general public.
I think overall it's been widely more accepted.
It's definitely become more accepted, but I think what I've seen now is, you got some of the like bigger name scientists that make the podcast rounds. There are some that recommend it. They'll give you their expertise on it. But then I see a lot of people that push back on it, and then we know some people that are anti that stuff. They're anti putting anything exogenous in their bodies. They want something that's going to provide them a natural production of testosterone.
I think that's where you should always start. She said, do I recommend it to everyone? Honestly, I think young guys teenage through 30, like, gosh, you're on the best natural anabolic. You're on the best anabolic there is. It's called just being a young man. You should do everything you can to maximize that. You should sleep. You should eat healthy. Lean foods, healthy fats.
I think you have at those ages, you have a potential to maximize.
You do.
But our environment, our lifestyles, I think, degrade that.
I think before you decide, like, it's degraded, whatever. I think, one, go get tested, right? Yeah. Like I have low testosterone. Well, do you? Because you don't have low testosterone.
Yeah.
Or you don't know you do. Like, I'm really tired. Maybe you need to sleep more.
Right.
So I would say this, because I've had friends ask me, like, should I get on TRT? Like, I don't know what your test levels are. I think, guys, if your testosterone is 500 or above, naturally, you just go get it tested. You're, whatever, you work out some, you don't, whatever. You go get tested, and let's say you're 35 years old. You get tested, and you're 500, 550. I personally think, without wanting to, I want to be a bodybuilder, I want to do X, Y, Z. I think you'd be crazy to go get on TRT, because you could, instead of doing that, and then probably perpetually lowering your body's natural production thereafter, you could do something as simple as get on some DHEA. This is for guys over 35 DHEA. Boron, make sure your minerals are all in check. All the things that lead, the sleep, the diet that lead to having higher testosterone levels. Losing weight. If you're overweight, you're undoubtedly you're at risk for having lower testosterone levels. So doing all those things first, I usually say if you're over 30, your test is above 500, you'd be kind of crazy to add something in.
Yeah, I mean, we know some people that they're super strict about everything, from everything they put in their body, from the food they consume to, like you said, their sleep habits, all that stuff, and they'll use natural compounds, probably isn't the right word, but natural supplements to help boost that. But I've seen people post crazy numbers and they say it's all natural, but I almost believe them because I know that they're crazy to that degree of how they live their life.
Well, there's always outliers. So, the testosterone range is huge.
Right.
Depending on what chart you look at, like, you're in the norm if you're from 200 to 1100. Like, Jesus, 200, you probably don't feel good. And 1100, like, there are some outliers there. I think trying to be maybe a better way to look at it instead of I'm normal. When you look at that range is what's optimal. I want to be optimal. Like, when I had my blood work done last time, my DHEA levels were right in the middle, just normal. But if I want them optimal, I can take 25 milligrams a day, and now they're optimal.
Yeah.
I'm still in the range, but they're optimal. So same goes for, I guess anything else. Like my HDL is good. I'm going to bump it up. I want it to be optimal. My blood pressure is good. I want it to be optimal.
Yep. You were talking about the ranges and being at, like, if you're over 550 or whatever, and that's a pretty good place to start.
I had one blood test one time. I don't think I was taking I don't think what it said I was taking was the correct amount, because I got one blood test back and it didn't measure it. It just said it was greater than 3,000. And here's the thing: I was taking what I thought was 500 milligrams a week. So to some people, they're like, oh, that's a lot of testosterone. Trust me, for a bodybuilder, and I'm not a bodybuilder, but someone who's like taking gear, like, it's not that much. Right.
A lot of this is relative, depending on.
It's very relative. Yeah, like an example of like a crazy cycle. I don't. What you hear and what actually goes on is a lot different. I've heard crazy numbers from people. What so and so. I heard from him that he's taking this. But I did hear, I won't mention it, but from a very good professional bodybuilder that I knew well, a conversation that they thought 4 grams a week was like. That was like the kind of the golden rule. That was like the number to hit. And anything beyond that was diminishing returns.
Yeah.
But that was like, this guy's 330 pounds too, but that was like the number. 2 grams, so 2,000 milligrams of testosterone, and then 2 grams of other compounds, depending on where he was at in his cycle. He would have some, down cycles to where he only did 750 tests for 6 weeks or 8 weeks, whatever. And then when you hop back on, it was, it kind of blast and cruise. When you're in your blast cycle, 4,000. I'm like, where the fuck do you put it?
That's crazy.
It's a lot.
Does that person have any health issues today?
Yes.
So you don't recommend that?
I mean, I don't know if it's completely from anabolic
steroid
use, but you couldn't rule it out. I think, I've never taken a gram a week before, stacked everything together, but I did get to a point where it's kind of going like, I'm going to do nothing. I did that for a long time, and I'm going to make myself optimal, and got on TRT.
Yeah. Well, what I was saying with like the 550, and you were saying it is all relative, because if you take 2 guys that are 30 years old and one naturally has 550 levels, they may not feel that great. Mm-hmm. Then you take another person that has levels of 800 and they may feel amazing, but doing a natural test booster like test launch or something may bump that person up and make them feel just as good as that person on TRT.
Right.
So obviously the first place to start is go get some blood work done. But there's got to be a lot of analyzing too, just outside of the blood work. What's your lifestyle like?
Well, because the blood work, that's a snapshot too.
Yeah.
So let's say I want to get tested, and my doctor says, well, I'm not going to give you I want to get a prescription. And so I go to my local doctor. I'm not giving you a prescription. We need to see what your levels are first. Well, get 4 hours of sleep a night for 5 nights leading up to your test. Don't lift weights. Don't eat protein. Maybe take some black licorice extract. And show up for your test and it'll be really low.
Yeah. Take your levels beforehand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then then you get your prescription, bang, you're good.
Yeah. You're good to go.
Free advice.
Free advice. Send your questions for how to do this.
To dupe your doctor.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you feel like I mentioned earlier, I think they've kind of turned into pill mills. There are obviously reputable places out there that are doing it, but have you heard any horror stories from any of these places?
I've not heard horror stories. I know what you mean because it used to associate like testosterone prescriptions with like your older, I'd say 50 plus male wanting to stay in shape, cyclist, with something like that. Now these companies, they're bodybuilding shows. But I think they know their market. Like that is a population that is going to probably need testosterone for the rest of their life to stay optimal.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like horror stories. If anything, Tyler, I would say it's probably best that they've entered the game and they're somewhat regulated. You at least know that the compound you're getting is the compound that it says it is what you're getting because it's through a prescription. There's usually, I don't know all of them, but there's blood tests associated with it. I have a call every 6 months, the person, they go over my numbers. And so it's that, or you got, there's also on the other side of the spectrum is the 20-year-old kid who's getting it from Gym Guy, and it says Trinase on it, but you don't know what the fuck it is.
Yeah.
There's Anavar, Primo. Those are very counterfeited products, and you don't know what you're putting in your body. So, or how it's always wondered, like, what's the quality control of the neighborhood steroid dealer? If there's an eyelash in that vial, does that get dumped, or does he pull out the eyelash and put the compound in there, and then you put that shit in your shoulder?
Right.
So I've not heard any horror stories. I'm sure that has the potential to go bad. Like any group of companies, there's probably good and bad in there. But I think overall, not that they're overall good. Like, hey, everybody needs to be on it. But versus the alternative, I think those companies are a net good.
Yeah. Do you think somebody like Sam Sulek can just walk into a doctor and be like, "Hey, I want to be a professional bodybuilder. What do I need to do to get you to prescribe me all this stuff?" Do you think a company like that would just let them do it? Because how old is that kid, Luke?
He's early 20s.
Early 20s.
Maybe mid 20s.
And he's insanely huge. He's not getting that prescribed.
Depends on your doctor.
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned pill mills. Like, people knew the doctors to go to get OxyContin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true. And whatever, like, you and I are both big freedom guys. Do whatever you want to do. You just hopefully you understand the consequences later in life.
Yeah.
Big guy, big kid. So
I would like it. A couple things. Maybe we should have started this. When people say like he uses steroids, one, you don't really know. I don't know what Sam Sulek takes. I don't know if he's published it or talked about it. I don't follow bodybuilding close enough. But there's, the rumors of what certain guys have taken, haven't. But over in general, he takes steroids is a really broad brush.
Yeah.
And I'll use an example. Steroids are drugs, but let's liken it to like drug dealers. Saying he's on steroids, which I'm on steroids. I take TRT. Okay. Don't confuse you by if someone says they're on TRT. You're on steroids.
Yeah.
Saying I take steroids and the Mr. Olympia winner, I don't know who won the Olympia. Derek Lungsford, Ronnie Coleman back in there, whoever, and he takes steroids. Or this, you got some local guys at the gym. Honestly, there's probably guys trying to win NPC amateur shows that are taking as much or more as the pro guys because they don't have the fucking genetics. They think it's just in what's in the bottle that's going to get them there. These guys with crazy, crazy genetics, they respond so well, not only to weight training and nutrition, but also to the drugs. So they might not have to take as much. And especially once they get really well-informed coaches and stuff involved, the levels you think they're taking might not be. And another thing is, once you've taken these big blast and cruise cycles and built a good amount of muscle and size, it doesn't take very much to keep it.
Right.
You can even make small gains. Your recovery takes longer. You do have to adapt your training to lower doses, but it really doesn't take much. Look at former bodybuilders, Jay Cutler, Phil Heath. These guys, they talk about it. publicly the amount that they currently, the TRT they currently take,
Right.
and they're massive guys, but they're genetically very blessed. They've worked very hard for the muscle they had, and they had obviously back in the day much larger cycles. But these guys in their 50s look great,
Yeah.
and they look healthy. So going back to what I say, like if you have, there's like levels of it, right? You have a guy that a drug user. Well, this guy, he smokes a little weed on the weekend with his friends. Likes to have a cocktail and smoke a little weed. He's a drug user. Now the next level is, this guy, the next guy, he has a drink, 4 or 5 times a week. He goes out on Wednesday nights because that's the night his favorite bar is karaoke, whatever. And he might get a little high or something like.
Are you talking about Luke?
Yeah,
I don't go out.
he's
I hate karaoke.
also a drug user, right? If you just paint with a broad brush.
Yeah.
Now there's this guy over here. He clearly likes to party. He gets a little wild, but he's working a normal job. He works on Wall Street. He does some coke. Okay, he does some coke. He likes to party. He'll do some blow, smoke some weed, but he's very functional drug user. All the way down to this guy's a fucking junkie.
Loser, messes up his life.
Yeah, he's freebasing, and sleeping on the street. Like, so to say they're all drug users is the same as like, well, that guy uses steroids. Well, okay. Is this the, a guy that's a avid gym goer and you probably see him. You couldn't tell if he was natural or not. Just a pretty fit older guy. Is this a guy in his 30s? You look at him like, God dang, he looks pretty. I don't know if that's natural. He's pretty veiny, pretty damn big. He might be on some sauce.
Yeah.
There's other guys at the gym that are fucking huge. They're moving weights. You're going, no way, no freaking way. That guy's natural. To the guy with traps popping out of his ears, and it's very, so there's a wide spectrum of use and people and that use, and I think with that are the side effects that you mentioned, and these guys know that there's side effects involved. There's a risk associated with taking an anabolic steroid. If you take enough to get an effect, there's enough there to get a side effect.
Yep.
The more effects you get, the more side effects you're exposed to.
Right.
But the guys at the highest level that are doing this, like, don't they know? Well, doesn't an F1 driver know that there's a possibility of driving a car at 200 miles an hour, and going around turns, they could fucking die? Yeah, they know.
Yeah.
They want to drive an F1.
Yeah.
And so freedom, right?
Yeah.
And if a guy wants to be on the Olympia stage and he has the potential, there's a lot of guys that want to drive F1. Every kid racing a go-kart in the world wants to drive an F1, but 20 guys get to drive.
Yeah.
Same with the Olympia. There is 20 guys that get to stand on a lot of guys. You go to any gym in the country, a lot of guys would like to be on that Olympia stage. But the truth is 20 guys have the potential to do it every year.
Yeah.
And there's guys willing to take a risk to do it. There's a lot of deaths in body. I don't condone, I don't like promote it and say you should do that. But it's just the reality.
Yeah.
Some guys choose to do that and are very successful at it. And unfortunately there's some consequences to those that don't have the potential to do. I've seen guys take steroids and I think all they got is the side effects from it.
Right.
Like, Jesus, you have a bald head and acne.
Yeah. Well,
You're like a sleeper car. You managed to do all that without changing a bit.
it's one of those things, like we said, we're big freedom people here. Do whatever you want to do. But a reality of life is there's only trade-offs. So you got to understand what those trade-offs are.
Right. If you take testosterone, you might be more of a man and have more chicks. There's trade-offs.
There's definitely trade-offs. So one thing I want to go back to that you touched on when you're talking about these bodybuilders, especially the ones who've made it to the Olympia or whatever, compete at a high level, taking steroids does not make you do the hard work. I mean, those guys are still spending hours inside the gym, eating, and just like even again, trade-offs. What are the trade-offs that I'm sure those guys don't live? They're not living. I'm not saying they're not living happy lifestyles, but there's the social aspect to the time and the commitment that you have to put into it. The steroids aren't making you not go out with your friends or whatever it is. So even doing steroids, and I think this goes back to stuff Luke and I talked about. We talked about it with you as back in the 90s when the home run chases were going on constantly.
Best time for baseball.
It was the best time for baseball. It was the best time to watch the home run derby, all that stuff. The steroids were not making those guys hit fastballs. Now, that being said, outside of like Barry Bonds, was a super skinny guy before he got on steroids. He probably wasn't hitting as many home runs because he didn't have the power, but he still had that ability to hit, the curveball, the fastball, and stuff that's coming in. So I think a lot of people, there's just like a overarching generalization about steroid use.
So
and cheating,
Yeah, take baseball for example. It does make you hit more home runs, but you first got to connect with the ball.
Taking steroids doesn't make you a more skillful player.
Right. It makes the ball go further. Yeah. So this is like, let's say steroids, again, amounts and stuff differ, but just for argument's sake, let's say steroids make you 5% better, 5% faster, 5% bigger, right? So what does 5% faster, does that mean? Well, for you, it means you're faster than me. You're faster than Luke because you take steroids. We're all normal guys and you're 5% faster. So you can finish a 100-meter run a few steps in front of us. Okay. It takes 100 steps. You finish 5 ahead of us. Split second. If you are a world-class sprinter and you take steroids, well, now you're a world record holder.
Right.
Right. And we mentioned like guys that respond better. The 5% is not equal across the board. So if your ceiling is 100 and mine's 1,000,000, we can both increase by 5%. 5% of 1,000,000 is way more than 5% of 100. So that's what like the guys, the Barry Bonds of just like there was steroid use. We say like in professional bodybuilding and there is in amateur bodybuilding. I would bet there is as much or more at the AAA, the amateur, because those guys they're trying to get a ticket to the big leagues to get paid. So that's when there's not testing and there's incentive. I bet there's more use, as much or more use with those guys trying to get there, but it's only 5%. So maybe that does make him get there more. But if you have a guy like Barry Bonds and every ball he hits goes 5% farther and he's hitting 360 yards, but it's got to go 375 to get over the fence. There you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the world championship.
Right. Yeah. No, that makes total sense. Culturally, growing up, you were a cheater if you took steroids. Mm-hmm. That probably still holds true today in traditional sports. Do you think there's ever a time where we cross that bridge where we're like, okay, you know what? This MLB player, he's 35 years old, whatever, he should be allowed to be on that. Do you think we ever cross that? Do you think we ever get over that hump? Because how do you explain as a parent to your kid, like, oh, this guy takes X, Y, and Z? Is that...
I mean, certainly not the amateur level. I don't think you ever see it. Now there is the talk you guys have heard of, like the enhanced games, which would be very, very curious. One thing I want to touch on, you mentioned like guys it doesn't, you still have to train hard, you still have to, you do. And something that I think people think, well, he doesn't work hard, he just takes steroids. Well, actually you can't work as hard as him because he takes steroids, right?
Right.
Your threshold, your capacity for training and recovery is so much more when your protein synthesis that's if you want to talk about like what steroid would just break it down to like its simplest form. What does a steroid do? They all have different, they have slightly different effects, whether you hold more water and it's better for a strength compound versus a cutting compound, but they all increase muscle by turning on protein synthesis. We talk about supplements that do the same, but that just kind of blows the anabolic signaling, like your anabolic window at the time at which your body can build muscle. Steroids just blow that out of the water. You can build muscle all the time. That's why you get bigger and bigger and bigger the more you take. But with that, your training capacity becomes enormous. You might have an hour and a half to where you can really effectively, as a natural athlete, strength train, and then it's diminishing returns after. But if you're on plenty of gear, and your nutrition's there, so you have the construction, the building blocks for it, your training can be through the roof, and your red blood cell count's high, so your oxygen levels are, I mean, all the things work better in terms of the damage you can inflict on your body to grow.
Right.
We've heard like the argument with the Tour de France. Those guys, they're actually healthier on drugs than they are off because it's so taxing on your body, and these drugs help your muscles and your body recover from that stress.
Right. Yeah. I kind of wish at the professional level, I almost think it should be fair game just because of the demands that you put on your body. Professional level, especially at contact sports, football, whatever it may be, I think they should be able to take it.
It gets into what's recovery, which I think is real. I think things like peptides and stuff that aren't necessarily what's a performance enhancer versus what's a recovery agent, and that can be a clouded area, like because testosterone does both. It's a great recovery agent, but also can really enhance your performance, and especially then when you have like contact sports. Well, that becomes tricky. If I'm bigger, faster, stronger because I'm on steroids and I'm smashing you in the face, if this is UFC or this is football, is that fair?
Right.
Versus, well, I have an injury, I tore a quad tendon, something like that, so I'm taking BPC, things like that to recover. That's that's for sanctioning bodies and stuff to sort out.
Yeah. I just think everybody should take deer antler spray. That seems to do the trick.
I've told my story about the deer antler spray.
Did you say it on the podcast?
My coach threw it away.
Oh, yeah.
This is last $50 you spent on.
It was like $80.
Which is like what, 300 now?
That was like half a paycheck when you work at a GNC in college.
Yeah, well, I know. Seriously.
I was going to spray that shit in my mouth and just destroy.
It's so funny because the marking on that definitely got me. When I tore my tricep, I was like, I'm going to go to GNC and get the deer antler spray.
Dude, there was a time I tried everything.
Oh, yeah.
Like supplement wise. I've tried everything. I worked at GNC. My dad's owned the gym. We sold supplements at the gym, so it was, everything from, that's the creatine kid to, I tried every,
Oh man, there was a kid this was in high school. There was a kid on the football team from freshman year to sophomore year. He just got big, faster, and stronger. We all kind of knew, but we would ask him, like, what do you take? Creatine, and I just get more sleep. It's like, that's all it takes.
He probably fucking did.
Yeah, he probably did do that too, but
yeah.
He definitely was hanging out with the older kids that knew where to get stuff.
Really? So, just some anecdotes. I think I was actually it might have been my first year at college that I came home for a summer, and I had a cousin who was in high school that was working out with me, and I got him or showed him some creatine, some phosphate, it was phosphagen. I'm trying to, EAS, I think made it. It was like creatine with sugar. Okay. That was the transport system. And I got an email from my uncle, his dad, this really kind of scathing email about how if my son wants to lift with you, that's great. But giving him performance enhancers and stuff that damage his body like creatine, not on my watch. No, that's and you should have talked to me. I really felt like shit.
Oh yeah.
I genuinely, Greg, I'm sorry. But I really did. I was like, oh Jesus. Like, and then I'm thinking like, man, I gave a kid creatine, you son of a bitch.
You're a horrible person.
Yeah. You don't like,
you don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. And I can't remember. I don't know I think he probably did say my parents, would be upset. I'm like, well, hide it at my house, or maybe they found it. Maybe they found it hidden in his closet. I don't remember the full story, but it was looked at as like this is the devil's sauce.
Yeah.
Turns out not only was he stronger and faster, he's probably smarter and healthier too.
Yeah.
Tyler hit me up. I still sell creatine.
He's still king at checkout.
Lots of it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was seen as such a,
oh, dude, I remember my mom being worried that I was taking protein in high school because she thought my brother had a bad experience with it. And I'm like,
I like I'm going to get on some protein.
Yeah.
Is it like chicken breast, or are you going to eat a steak with your salad?
Yeah. It is funny, just the differences in generations. I like my parents' generations, they're boomers. God bless them. But they didn't know any different. They didn't grow up with that type of education.
You're trying to protect your kid.
Yeah. So what you're saying is put your kids on TRT and creatine. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Definitely.
But don't let them smoke at the same time.
Smoke your creatine?
No. Filtered cigarettes, you idiot.
Oh, yeah. Straight menthols. Luke?
Yeah.
What are we at?
36 minutes.
36 minutes? Do you got anything to add now that you got a microphone, big
things.
producer boy?
I was going to say, you're going to regret giving me a microphone. One, I don't know if either of you saw the story, this past Arnold that came out, the gal that died there.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
I did see it, yeah.
She wasn't even competing. She was like 14 weeks out from her show, and she was 20. So there's been a lot of like big publications posting some pretty bad stuff about steroids. So I guess like my question is like, personally, I don't put TRT in the same category as like steroids in quotation marks. Is there any reason to take anything besides TRT unless you are the top 20? Like you're going to be at the Arnold or whatever, or you're going to be a bodybuilder.
You won't know if you're going to be that unless you take it.
You don't think you can tell your genetics are?
Well, you gotta go qualified too. I mean, well, how about started with fun? It's fun to take more stuff. I mean, just fucking like, honestly, it's more fun.
You feel good.
Yeah. So
up to a point.
Yeah, that's very true too. Like you can feel like shit too. There's plenty of compounds that make you feel like shit. You're probably at some level to see where you're going to go. You're probably going to have to add some more compounds. Then you're not just going to take TRT and step on a local stage here and do well. Now, if you have unbelievable, you've heard that Ronnie Coleman went pro naturally, Kai Green went pro naturally, and maybe they did. Right? These are the freaky of the freakiest. But for most people, you're going to be taking much more than just testosterone as you go up those ranks.
Yeah. I mean, is it more to your question? Like, can you look at somebody and tell that they're going to experience greater benefits?
I mean, that's part of it. Part of me is just like, I don't see why anyone would take anything besides TRT unless they're like
they wanted to go that route.
I want to be a professional bodybuilder.
Just go the personal. I mean, what
Yeah.
like, don't you know it could hurt you? Well, yeah. Don't. I mean, people know cigarettes can hurt them. They know speeding is dangerous. That they do it anyway.
Well, the other thing I was thinking too is like with the emergence of these people like Derek from More Plates, More Dates, and like even Huberman to an extent. I just feel like it's a little bit more like in the open and talked about, and it's not like Derek's doing like how-to videos, but I mean like you can get basically the information. Is that a net positive? Is it exposing that to young people who probably aren't going to be
right?
Like in reality, they're not going to be pro bodybuilders.
Yeah,
they think they're going to be. Is that a good thing?
I bet not 1% of guys who take gear in the gym, like for the purpose of building their body, are ever going to compete, and certainly at a high level. Your odds of becoming a pro bodybuilder are so against you. Most guys are going to try their whole life and never become a pro bodybuilder. Is the truth, and some of it's like you said, it's predetermined. I've seen kids. The Zimmer family down the road, like Joe Zimmer. You can put up a picture of him in high school. This kid was 17 years old, 200 pounds, and an absolute monster. Veiny freak.
Yeah.
But he's a farm kid.
Right.
And people, it was almost like guilty by association. Like he must be like, dude, he's trust me, he's eating pizza and corn dog when he wants to. Yeah, a lot of meat and beef and food, but like there's freaks. And so for him, like I think he made a good choice. He's an eye surgeon now. But wrestled at University of Nebraska, like freaky athlete. If he chose instead, I want to be a professional bodybuilder, he had all the intangibles: big hanging hamstrings, short, you can't have real long, stretched out muscle bellies. You need to be short, compact. Everything has to be, the direct proportion. You have to have wide clavicles. All those things have to be there too. So a kid like someone like that, you could see, like, if he looks like this at 17, I could see at 30 on gear how he gets to be a Antonio Burton, so a guy like that.
Yeah. Well, it's something interesting. You said, is it good for younger people to have all this information out there? But maybe I missed the boat earlier than 2020, but I just feel like post 2020, because of the online, the more pull that the online world has, social media and stuff has, I just feel like I see more and more younger kids being like, oh, I want to get into like the health and fitness industry. I want to be a personal trainer. I don't discourage anybody from doing that, but it's not as easy as I'm going to be a personal trainer. Or I'm going to be a bodybuilder or a fitness competitor. Think of it more long-term than just that, because it looks cool and fun. But what are you building for your future if that's like your first goal that you want to do?
Yeah. I'd say if you're really into it and you'd be good at it, there's space for you.
Yeah.
Right. There's personal trainers retiring too, and personal trainers that are going to be pushed out if you're really good.
Yeah.
If you're good enough, go for it. So I wouldn't discourage anyone from getting into it. But just because you like lifting weights doesn't mean you should be a personal trainer.
Right.
You know, just because you can flip a good, you're going to say this,
Yeah.
just because you can flip a good burger doesn't mean you should own the restaurant.
Yeah.
And so that's part of it too. You know,
Yeah.
what skills, how much dedication and really discipline you're going to have, because that comes from, well, I'm really good at lifting weights. I have a good physique. I have a good knowledge base. How good are you at coaching people
Right.
and relatable? What's your, your quote bedside manner?
Yeah.
You know, what that there's a lot there too.
You see it a lot with coaches and trainers or whatever. They'll have, a handful of clients that see a lot of success because they do everything by the book. They learn a little bit and they become very passionate about it. But then the next thing that you find out is that the person that you just helped lose 50 pounds or whatever is now coaching, taking on clients to coach. And not saying they can't, but I think there's sometimes it gets a little murky with trying to turn your passion or what you really like to do into your business.
Yeah, I think that's how people find out, right? They're either that's the cloth that they were cut in, or they're kind of pretending because they got into it for a while.
Yeah.
And how to decide that's a tough. It's nothing that you can tell someone or know. Like, there's and I'm maybe guilty of this, like seeing someone who becomes a trainer, it's like, oh gee, another fitness into another, and then you like, but everyone starts there somewhere, right? Everyone starts at some point, and you're like, oh damn, it's actually a really good coach, aren't they? They actually really got their shit together and learned. So I know people like that. So I wouldn't discourage anyone, but to your point, there is a lot of like,
sit back and do some inventory on it,
Yeah. I did my first show. I had a coach. Now I'm a coach. That, I think, take a step back from maybe you just want to be a trainer first and general wellness before now you're prescribing protocols and stuff for either for gear or even for stage, presence, like just because your coach helped you get ready for stage. If you have a good coach, he's going to use a different protocol for everyone based on their aesthetic, their look, where they're at, so far out, etc.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good question, Luke.
Thank you.
Got any more?
Nope, that's it.
That's perfect. Well, let's just wrap it up on that then. Thanks for the steroid talk, guys.
Thank you.
You got to sell you someone.
Yeah, perfect. I'm right on left.